Welcome to the Developing Life Podcast. Welcome to episode 11 of the Developing Life Podcast. Effective communication without seeming forced is a crucial skill that makes all the difference in our businesses. So how can we navigate this balance to authentically connect with our audience, ensuring our messaging remains genuine as we engage? Today, we are excited to welcome Mel Barfield, a creative force in the copywriting industry known for her dynamic and personality-packed copy. Mel has an eclectic background that enriches her writing, having been a childcare provider, shop assistant, local government employee, and event coordinator. She's a qualified career advisor, bringing a diverse perspective to her craft. Mel contributes her expertise to Freelancer Magazine and co-hosts the Indie Business Club, a fresh podcast aimed at founders and freelancers. Her career is driven by a passion for words and a penchant for storytelling that captures and conveys the essence of each brand she works with. Join the conversation hosted by Davron Bowman as Mel shares her insights on creating captivating, character-rich content that connects. Let's dive in the art of striking the right tone without trying too hard. Davron.
Thank you so much. True, amazing introduction.
Oh, that was lovely.
As always. Yeah, she's a pro at that.
She's so good.
And definitely. So we are here for a topic that it's becoming more important by the day. We live in a world where AI is becoming the norm, where it's about putting out content quickly and just flooding the internet, and it is becoming just a sea of redundancy. So we're super excited to have Mel with us. For those of you just joining us, she is an expert communicator, master at storytelling, and a brand tone voice specialist. I think, Mel, we connected a little bit ago during Liesl McDonald's episode about global connectivity and creativity. You were super supportive. Yeah.
I love her, and she's here now.
She's amazing. She just
her little face popped up on your name popped up on the chat saying hi. So hi, Liesl.
Yeah.
And hi, Nick, as well.
Have you with us, Liesl? Yeah. Mel, you got me. So like we had Liesl's episode. You were super supportive in there, and I wanted to follow up with you. And so I creeped your LinkedIn. You reminded me of Dave Harlan, the Word Man. I know that he's very popular where you're from, and that tone of building just curiosity.
Can you just confirm that I did not tell you to say that?
No, you did not. No.
Thank you.
He's one of the emails I'm still subscribed to after like 7 years, just because it's exciting. And your page, your whole ecosystem was exactly the same. Like your kindness and personality came through in Liesl's episode. I creeped your LinkedIn page and you called me out by calling me a nosy bastard, which was, yes, I definitely am. Your headline on your page. So, it just sparks curiosity. And so getting to listen to you, see your journey at CopyCon, your recent interviews, just the art of curiosity, persuasion, foreshadowing, all of these things that are super relevant to us. You do it so effortlessly. So that's why you're here with us today. If you will you just take a little bit of time to introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about your journey?
I will. Thank you for the incredible hype. That was amazing. I've written down Sea of Redundancy because I'm totally going to use that one. My name is Mel Barfield, and I'm in Northamptonshire, which is kind of in the middle of England. And I'm a copywriter and event speaker. And as you said, just about to, imminently launching a podcast called Indie Business Club, which is intended to support freelancers and founders with all the issues that they face, and generally to kind of create a bit of a sense of community as well. So, and I did say this before we went live. I want to say it one more time. You've got incredible plants. As you can see, I appreciate a good plant.
I appreciate it. It's an ongoing journey. I need to offload some of them. So now your history in communication, coming from a creative standpoint, I think we kind of forget how powerful communication is. Like we try to box it into visuals. That's how we're taught as creatives to communicate. But we kind of undervalue the power of concise communication and kind of personalizing, making sure that when we post something, people kind of immediately know that it's us. So before we dive into the value of creating a unique brand tone and brand voice, can we first maybe dive into dispelling some of the misconceptions that are centered around brand tone and brand voice? I know I listened to one of your recent interviews, and there's a very definitive line between brand tone and brand voice. So, can you kind of explain to us what the differences are, how you instruct people in your workshops to elevate them, or how we can start to show our personality?
Sure. Well, the term tone of voice gets thrown around quite often, but as you said, they're two different things. So often I'll use the term verbal identity to. I didn't coin that. I didn't make that term up, but that's the one I employ to cover all aspects. And the main difference between tone and voice is that your voice should be consistent throughout, but your tone will change. So when there's some big headline news like the Queen dying or some big global event, or even if you're just talking about something particularly sensitive that's in your own little brand ecosystem, you can adjust your tone to suit the mood and make sure that you're being appropriate in that particular situation. But your voice, the elements of your voice should stay consistent throughout. And one of the main pitfalls people kind of fall into, I suppose, is thinking that it's always something with loads of personality. So your voice or your verbal identity isn't always about being crazy and wacky and funny and hilarious and making people laugh. There are lots of brands with very somber voices and very straightforward, no nonsense voices. There's a voice for every brand, and it's not all about sounding like, I don't know if do you have innocent smoothies over there? That's the one that gets mentioned every time anyone talks about a tone of voice in the UK.
No, what, innocent smoothies? No, we'll have to
So
look
it's
into
just
it.
this like cheeky brand basically that is really friendly and funny, and they don't take themselves seriously, and that's always held up as the kind of the gold standard of verbal identity, because they're so consistent. But it's a bit of a cliche, and everyone, especially smaller brands, seems to want to kind of replicate that. But then everyone's going to sound the same if everyone's shooting for the same type of voice.
Yeah.
But also the other mistake that I see is when brands try, or especially new brands or personal brands, if somebody's launching themselves as a consultant, is trying to pick a voice, and that's not how it should work. It should be about finding what your voice already is, instead of trying to kind of choose a mask to wear, which obviously relates very closely to authenticity, because if you're trying to step into a voice and sound like something you're not, people can see through it really easily.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it makes a huge difference if you have one form of brand tone or voice online, and then you're hired for consulting or a workshop or something, and your energy, your presence, your cadence is all completely different. It's kind of a negative shock factor. I love that example that you used, as in, like, a lot of us do make an appearance online wearing a mask. That's definitely a pitfall that I've fallen into as creatives and strategists. We're actually, we're kind of motivated to put ourselves in a box to find, are we professional, are we funny, are we quirky, and sometimes we don't consider those different inflections of brand tone, or kind of the future thinking as to how this could be successful or detrimental, or how it could shift us. So definitely something that we need to be conscious of. As creatives, most of us are introverted, though. A lot of us are kind
Do
of
you
like, we
think?
I think, I mean, it's been
Is
kind
that
of
why we like plants more than people?
probably we can talk to them and they're really good listeners, right?
They never answer back.
Themselves, yeah, and they never get on us about our bad singing voice. Well, yours is probably much better than mine, but so how do we as creatives kind of overcome some of those fears, because it is really hard to just show up and put yourself out there. And if we are in this box right now of we've maybe picked a brand tone that doesn't befit us. Like, how do we break out of that? I mean, just how do we kind of take control and just start showing up as ourselves?
Well, I was quite lucky because when I went freelance, I'd already been in some writing communities, and I'd seen lots of other people talk about how they were authentically themselves online. And if anything, rather than being detrimental, it really helped them to find the right people to work with. So I was really lucky because from day one, I was able to go, actually, I'm not going to well, you can see I almost actually changed my top before coming on. I thought, do you know what? No, I'm not going to. I'm going to wear my t-shirt because that's how people see me online. They see me if I'm in a Zoom call, I'm wearing, it is brand colors, but it's a comfortable t-shirt. The very first time I went onto a Zoom call, I was like, oh, I'm gonna like make myself look. And I thought, no, I'm just not gonna try and put a mask on. So I was very lucky that I did it from the start, and very quickly. You asked me earlier off air how I met Liesl, and it was on Twitter.
Nice.
And very quickly in my Twitter life, just decided to spew thoughts from my brain without any filter and just see what happened. And that worked out really well for me. So I just carried on doing it. And then by the time I went freelance and started using LinkedIn more, as Twitter started feeling a bit like a sinking ship, I just decided to try and take that approach over to LinkedIn. I think if you've already kind of painted yourself into a corner with your voice, it's possible to work your way back, but perhaps doing it gradually is a good idea. So it doesn't feel like this very shocking change. But we see with brands when they have a rebrand, it's possible to try and tweak your tone of voice. But if there is a really harsh change from, if it's night and day difference, then it can feel quite jarring. I suppose that the time where that is worth doing is if you are really struggling and you need to appeal to a completely different demographic. But if you're trying to stay fresh for the customers you've already got, then it's a very risky move. But I see it with freelancers and self-employed people who are on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm not going to call it X. I'm sorry. Refuse to. Stubborn. They, particularly on LinkedIn, they'll feel very exposed. You mentioned about being introverted, about feeling like, oh, and I do get that. I really do understand that that's how some people feel. But more often than not, when they do start being more themselves, it feels very liberating. And I would just really encourage anyone to try, and if you want to do it slowly, I get that. If you want to switch from being really corporate on LinkedIn to showing a bit more personality, then maybe it is a good idea to do that slowly. But changing how you show up to be more authentic and more real it makes life easier. I mean, I posted about the Northern Lights earlier this week and just whacked out a post. Well, it went big for me. And I just stuck it out there in 15 minutes because I was just like, brain to fingers, just get it out. And it did like really well compared to other posts. And I think that's where, if you are authentic, it becomes just so much quicker and easier to just or if you're working for a brand and you're writing every day in the same tone of voice or verbal identity, using the same type of voice, you get in the swing of it. And that's where having that really strong tone of voice can be so useful. It's like a shortcut. It's a shortcut for you when you're writing, and it's also a shortcut for the people reading it because they start to recognize how you sound in different places, how you're sounding the same everywhere.
Yeah, which makes it just so easy for them to pick you out, to identify you, and to identify with you. You're right on LinkedIn, just because it's such a professional network. You go in there with a business mindset,
It's not really.
Well, yeah, with the amount of
But
memes that I've seen here
is.
lately, yeah, it's slowly devolving. But no, I mean, it's the place that you go when you're trying to transact. And it also, like, it can seem so intimidating. Like, there are people on there that are performing really well, who have, huge audiences. For one reason or another, it can be off-putting or intimidating. But you're not the first person who has said that something that has just kind of spilled from brain to fingers has performed really well, and it's because there's no time in between for you to refine or finesse or take away or chop it all up into pieces. So I
And
know
that's what people do. They over sanitize what they're saying. Some people should sanitize a bit more because you see something online, sometimes you think, if I were a client, I would be deeply put off by this thing someone's just posted. But in terms of like sounding like yourself, yeah, that's people do it all the time. They have something that's really true to them, and then they talk themselves out of being that authentic because they think they have to sound like every other. Oh, you mentioned there are lots of people on there with really big followings. As soon as you said that, I kind of went, well, because a lot of these people with these huge followings, and I think it's important for people to know this because it then stops you feeling like, oh man, what are they doing so well? A lot of them are in engagement pods, and they've got artificial like ways to boost their follow numbers, and so it's not a level playing field. So as soon as you know that it isn't a level playing field, you can be less worried about all the other people with tons and tons of followers, because the way they've got those followers isn't necessarily organic. So I think people need to try. Hi Ben, it's Ben. People need to try and not compare themselves to other people online, because you're just setting yourself up to feel inadequate when actually it's not a level playing field at all.
That's so true. And I do want everyone to know that we will definitely be coming back to tackle that topic on the rise of the fake influencers. It is something that needs to kind of be exposed a little bit more.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah, we'll have
on another episode.
yeah.
Are you going to invite one on and then shame them?
No, not publicly.
Don't do that. That's not your style. No. Nice.
We'll shame them internally and then broadcast. But no. So can you expand a little bit on the point of some of the creators that need to sanitize a little bit more? I know that in one of the recent conversations I watched on YouTube that you did mention that there's a difference between sharing vulnerable moments when you're past them and have kind of put yourself together and can view it, versus sharing in the moment of vulnerability. So can you speak a little bit to the impact or the necessity of kind of moving beyond a situation and then speaking with clarity as opposed to just being unfiltered?
Absolutely. And that in that situation, the reason that I've said before that it's important to wait until you're out of that feeling of vulnerability is from a point of view of wanting that person to not feel worse than they already do. So it's about safeguarding their own well-being as much as it is. I'm not kind of like, oh, I don't want to see that on here. This is a professional platform. It's not about that. It's more about wanting that person to present in their best light, but with elements of vulnerability, rather than only ever going on and being extremely vulnerable on LinkedIn, because it comes back to what I was saying earlier about what would a client think. Mm-hmm. If I were a client and I'm hiring two people out of two people, and one is sharing extremely vulnerable stuff that they're still in the middle of, versus someone who isn't sharing those things, or perhaps they're sharing vulnerabilities but talking about how they've overcome them, there's quite a big difference there. And if you're looking to invest your money in a freelancer or a consultant, you're going to be looking for someone who you think will be able to hit the ground running and get on with a piece of work that you need to give them. So that's where that bit of advice comes in, I guess, is if you are having a difficult time, there's a lot of people who will like and comment on your post in support, but they're not necessarily the people who are going to pay your bills. So I do think it's important for people to protect themselves and not always overshare until after the event. And actually, it was my friend Molly Scanlon who raised that tactic, I suppose, for want of a better term, of kind of waiting don't post when you're in it. Wait until you can post with a bit of hindsight and distance from that difficult situation.
I love that. It's kind of when you break it down on a granular level, it's if you're posting in the moment, then you're kind of looking for comfort or a response from anyone to validate that, as opposed to, leveraging that as a positive and kind of showing how you've worked through it, how you can look back at it, with clarity and how you've processed. So it's definitely
And
something.
it's difficult on LinkedIn because you become really good friends with people. And so having that support from people is really valuable, but there are other people lurking who might not engage with the post, but have seen it, clocked it, gone, well, maybe we won't work with them for that reason. Which isn't, it's sad. It's not great that people would have that reaction, but it's the reality.
Yeah. And that's important for us to remember. I know that our good friend Heather just posted a video. I forget the author, maybe she'll drop it in chat, but how, we're in the decline of the following, kind of status on social media. We don't realize how many people interact with and engage with our content from behind the scenes and might never leave a visible trace. So we need to be considerate from an audience at all angles. Speaking to that, though, I mean, you were an expert at just kind of effortlessly putting yourself into conversations, like just elevating them around the board. It's very easy to pick out your posts when you're online because they're humorous, but they're insightful, and at their core, they're very honest, which is, it's amazing. When we connected before,
making me go all red.
I'm sorry.
I'm feeling all hot because you're making me all embarrassed. In fact, I think I've got a plan here. I'm going to have to get it out.
I'm sorry.
Carry on. I'll just look like a Tennessee belle.
Yeah, get yourself prepared for the end when everyone else comes on and sings your praises too. But no, so I know that we had a little conversation before we went live about you wanting to touch on the importance of a network and how authenticity, not just from a landing client's perspective, but the value of connecting with the right people, of increasing your professional network, of showing up for them, and how that's accelerated your career. That's something that I would really love to dig a little deeper on, because as mostly introverts, not all of us, and also as entrepreneurs, freelancers, people that tend to spend more time alone, we kind of forget about the value of networking and connections, or maybe we just don't want to bother people. But can you speak a little bit to some experiences that you've had where showing up as yourself has increased your network and the opportunities that that's created for you?
Absolutely. I mean, it's run through my entire freelance career so far. I'm 2.5 years in to being freelance, and as mentioned earlier, that before going freelance, I started getting to know lots of other people on Twitter, and that then meant that when I did go freelance, I had this kind of ready-made cushion of support around me, which was just lovely. And I wouldn't have been able to do that and go freelance without knowing that I had, like I mentioned earlier, about people saying, sharing the way they do things. So one of the examples is seeing someone who said, I don't give out my phone number. And it would never have occurred to me not to give out my phone number. There's a few people on here who have my phone number, but luckily they don't abuse it. And it's those little things, those little bits of sharing information, sharing who not to work with, who's really good to work with. The network. So for the first year of freelancing, possibly longer, almost all of my work was through referrals from other people. But that wasn't my intention in building a network. Building a network was from a place of just being really nosy and wanting to know people and making friends. But it was almost like a byproduct of that is when somebody has too much work on, or they get approached by someone who is after something that's not quite their specialism, then being in people's minds to have the work passed on to help them out and help me out, it was the source of a lot of my work. Now I've been more active on LinkedIn. It's kind of tipped a little bit, and I'll get people who have just searched in LinkedIn for a copywriter, and by the magic of the algorithm and me being on LinkedIn about 24 hours a day, I seem to come up in results sometimes, which is nice. But yeah, the network it's everything. I wouldn't be able to be freelance without it. And there's a couple of people on this call who are very good friends of mine that I have good fun with. And it makes an enormous difference to the experience of, and I often say that I've got more colleagues now than I ever had in any employed job.
Wow. That process seems so much more organic and human. In a sense, we're saying that personalization is a big part of positioning because a lot of us hate selling. A lot of us know how many emails we open up daily, how many cold calls come through, how many people just want to transact. So even standing out in a way of approaching people out of curiosity or just out of support or, out of gratitude is a much more powerful way to create a lasting connection, which is
It can be
the goal,
difficult sometimes though, because I'll try and like connect people that I know would get on together. And a friend of mine said just the other day, he DM'd me and he said, don't take this the wrong way, but he swore, I won't swear, how the flip do you manage to, I can't remember how he worded it. He said something like hold so many people in your head. And I was like, I don't, it's really hard. And when I go to, in real life events, it's like I've got to go through my Rolodex and go, oh, I know this person. How do I know them? So the bigger the network grows, the harder it becomes to remember. This sounds awful, sound like a diva. But like, do I even know you? But I had a top tip if I'm struggling to remember someone's name and I'm like, I know I've met them, but I can't remember where. Then you just say, it's good to see you. Because then if you haven't actually met them in real life, you're not saying, like, if you say it's good to meet you, they'll be like, I met you last year. And you look like a horrible person. Whereas there's a little top tip to deal with your fame. Davron.
The difference one word, like the difference one word makes is just.
I said fame, and now I wish I hadn't. But yeah, it can be really weird going into a room and people know who you are and you don't know who they are, because of posting on LinkedIn. And I've been in the room with people and they've then gone, oh, but I never actually post. I'm like, oh, good. That I feel better now that I didn't recognize you because they've been lurkers. But yeah, it's so vitally important to me. And that's one of the reasons that Ben and I have started the podcast, is to build on that. Because there used to be this thing on Twitter called Content Club UK. I think they've paused it now, because of Twitter being a desert wasteland. And that was every Tuesday at 11 a.m. everyone would gather around the hashtag and answer some questions. And it was a really lovely way to kind of chat to other people doing the same kind of work, share ideas. That's where I got the don't give your phone number out thing. And that was such a lovely sense of community. And there isn't really anything like that on LinkedIn. It doesn't work on LinkedIn having like time of the week chats. Just doesn't, because of the way comments don't flow in a conversational like order in the same way they do on Twitter. So it's not the same. So one of the things we're trying to recreate is that feeling of like sharing information, sharing ways to do things, different viewpoints, different strategies, different processes, in the hope that it then helps other people, but also, helps build our own networks and profiles as well.
I love your podcast. I love the difference in perspectives. I think the last episode that I caught was a March episode where you actually kind of covered this topic on being vulnerable online. And it's kind of like
Ben doesn't share anything. He's even got his wife's name on his Zoom. Ben is a jet. Hi, Ben. But yeah, often we do have different ways of doing things, and that's good because we'll often go, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that, or maybe I should do things more that way. It's often me that goes, have a little light bulb above my head. So yeah, and the beauty of being freelance or a founder or business owner is it's in your gift to change things. So if you kind of go, oh, it's a different way of doing things. Sorry for oversharing your name there, Ben. And you can learn from that and adapt what you're doing. You don't have to just stay because that's what the company handbook says. You can rip that up and chuck it out the window. You can write your own rules. And that's why I think it's so important to keep having conversations about how people do stuff and keep reviewing how you do stuff yourself. Something just yesterday, Bill Hinchin, who's a copywriter, raised the subject in a forum about like contractual clauses. And I was like, oh, I thought I had that in my contract, and I actually don't. So it's those little checks and balances that you'd perhaps have in a business. You might have your annual review or something. You don't have that. You don't have someone else to do all of your contracts and paperwork, or you do if you've got a VA. So it's so important to have those conversations with other people in the same industry. And just on that, this is a very long answer, but on that note, I think when you start off being freelance or self-employed, there can be this sense that everyone's your competition. And the sooner you realize that you can actually be generous and help other people, the better the experience will be. And there's the odd outlier who is in any industry. There'll be some guy who everyone knows is a bit of a dick. So sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Yes,
Sorry,
of course.
So when there's someone who's known by lots of people to be a bad dude or woman, it's not exclusively men, then people talk about them. People talk about, oh, don't trust that one. Watch out for him or her. Naming no names. And so I think if you've built within your network, you've got this kind of assumed level of trust and decency and ethics, then you can kind of team up a bit and be like, well, watch out for that guy, or watch out for them. This company didn't pay me. This person like rinsed me for intel in a discovery call. Watch out for them. And it's just so important to have that whispered network as well, and know that people have got your back and you've got theirs.
Yeah, that is an incredibly important side of networking to share, is that it's not just for your benefit, it's for your safety, and things like that need to be a little
It's the
more
herd, safety of the herd.
Yeah, 100%. And no, and the answer was beautiful. It ties into pretty much all of the episodes that we have had so far, and our mission here is more so exposure and awareness. Like, you don't know what you don't know. So while it's important to have that internal network, it's also important to see how all of these pieces work together. So let's dive into the main topic that we're here to discuss today. And we've got an exciting kind of immersive experience lined up a little bit after this to show you Mel's amazing talent at work. But before we get to kind of revising some copy and personalizing it, can you speak directly to maybe 2 or 3 actionable steps, or maybe a specific portion of your workshop that you find is most valuable in helping us create a personality-filled brand voice without it overshadowing or diminishing our professionalism?
It's a very big question. We're going to try and break it down. With wanting to sound professional, I guess I'd say the parameters have changed massively in the last few years. I think COVID was a huge influence on what we consider to be professional, hence my t-shirt. So I think it depends on your definition of professional, because often people mean formal when they say professional, but they're not the same thing. So you can absolutely be professional and have a very personable tone of voice, and cheeky tone of voice even. You mentioned Dave Harland earlier. He's, you wouldn't look at his content and think he's very unprofessional. Though some people have unsubscribed for that very reason. No one would doubt that he's very professional at what he does, and I've been lucky to get to know him a little bit and know that he is constantly working and constantly immensely professional. So I think it depends on your definition of an expectation when you say professional.
Well, can you maybe set some boundaries for us? Because that we're moving towards a world where our imagination, our creativity, and our personalities are going to be the biggest differentiating factors, versus AI. So those are increasingly the things that we will be hired for. So maybe do you have some examples that you can provide that maybe show us the negative side, like what happens when we're not considerate, or what the difference is between professionalism and being formal, and how to kind of just consider those things from all aspects. I know that recently you've shared a few examples of like brand voice and tone gone wrong and the detrimental impact. So just a few pointers on things that we can keep in mind that would impact not just how we show up now, but maybe how we consider the impact of our words in the future, to make sure that they're not used against us, or that they don't create like a negative impact.
I just have to say that in the chat, hello, brown mother. She put profanity is professional language. That's a whole other can of worms, is whether to swear. I used to swear loads, and actually Ben doesn't swear, so he's been a very good influence on me in that regard. But yeah, in terms of brands putting a step wrong, one of the examples that I know we've talked about is that there was a Tampax tweet that was so avoidable, so deeply avoidable, which was a play on a meme type format where it said something like, you're in their DMs, we're in them, we are not the same. So it was making a sex joke. And I think like when you're providing healthcare products to literal children, that's like, there should be something in your brand guidelines or your verbal identity guidelines that says, we don't do innuendo because we're a product that is about like an essential product that that people have to use. So there are missteps, and more recently as well, along the same lines, where Bumble, the dating app, had a billboard referencing celibacy and kind of making a joke about how celibacy is not the answer or something like that, and it just in one billboard, in one sentence, just wiped out so much trust from people who would have been in their community. And they've since done a bit of a groveling apology of like, we got it wrong and we want to keep the conversation going, and we're going to donate money. And people don't remember that you donated money to like try and make up for messing up. People remember that you messed up. So I think it's so avoidable though. It's so avoidable by having those rules in place. So yeah, I think I think social media is where it can be particularly dangerous, but with Bumble, that was literally a billboard. It was a billboard, so it must have had to go through so many people to actually happen. I'm assuming it was a real billboard. Of course, you never know these days whether someone's just photoshopped it and then released it as if it's one. But yeah, there are so many ways that you can safeguard against having a brand voice just get completely abused. And unfortunately, that's the problem sometimes, is that the tone of voice document will be done, put in a folder, stuck in a filing cabinet somewhere, and it doesn't actually get used. So can you remind me what your question was? Because I've forgotten half of it.
Yeah, no, I think that covers it. Just being mindful, and just kind of a few examples of what can happen to derail, our brand or our audience engagement.
Oh, the other one is because I've been listening to My Favorite Murder podcast. Thank you, Sophie Cross, for telling me about that, who's the editor of Freelancer magazine. I'm really behind though. So I'm like episode 50 and there's 400.
What is the podcast?
It's My Favorite Murder.
Okay.
You must have heard of it. It's one of the biggest. It's two LA girls having a chat, women, sorry, and they talk about true crime stuff. They were talking about a horrible event I think it was in Canada, on a Greyhound bus that involved a bad thing happening, and the Greyhound company had actually just done a campaign. They had to take down the posters that said something like, there's a reason that you've never heard of bus rage. And it was trying to like position it as this lovely, peaceful thing to do, to go on a bus. And then this awful tragedy happened where somebody got killed on a bus through bus rage, I guess. So there are, yeah, I mean, you can't blame that on the marketing department, but perhaps yeah, they acted pretty quickly, I think, and took down any other posters. But I think you've just got to be really reactive as well and sensitive to what's going on, because as we know, there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the world. And there's another example actually I saw somebody share, and I wish I'd written down her name because now I feel bad that I can't remember who it was. But it was I think it was for YouTube, and it was for a video about the hijab, and it was called like they'd written unveiling ways to use and it's like, no, no, you don't use the word unveiling when you're talking about a very sacred religious practice for many people. So it was that like cultural tone deaf misstep that was actually like, sometimes you don't need to speak to many people to realize that something's a bad idea, culturally insensitive or whatever. So yeah, that's where having a really diverse team of people to look at your copy is helpful. And it's not easy when you're a freelancer or a solopreneur, or if it's just you on your own. It can be difficult to make sure that you're doing those checks and measures. But that's where having trying to make sure that your network is as diverse as possible, and you're seeing things like that on the feed is really helpful. That's what I miss about Twitter, actually. That used to be a really diverse and interesting place, and now it's not so diverse and interesting. Well, it's interesting, but not in a good way.
No, I definitely agree with that. I know that Liesel's going crazy in the chat. I know that she's the expert on global and cultural immersion, and it's actually been a running theme for our last few episodes that you really have to consider those perspectives. So I'd like to give you maybe just a few moments to shamelessly plug your workshops. I don't want you to give away all of your secrets, but one of the conversations that we're really focused on is conveying the value of real design and communication services, because there is a difference in hiring someone for a couple $100 who's going to come in, do it really quick, probably follows no guidelines, and isn't taking much into consideration beyond just this one task that's at hand. So can you kind of help us realize the importance and the value of the depth of brand tone and voice development that you do, and really how that sets a business or even an entrepreneur, startup up for success as they're growing and moving forward? And also how many times these things should be referenced. You just said a lot of these things get developed and then thrown into a drawer. How often should we be analyzing our brand tone and voice, especially if we're kind of new to it?
To answer your last part of the question first, it depends, which is almost always the answer to any question you'll ever ask. Because if you've got a team of 2 people and you're the only 2 churning out the content over and over again, then you are likely to kind of review it as you go and test and check and change as you go. If you've got that within your gift. Whereas if you've got a team of 50 writers, then it's going to be probably going to be quite a bit more static, and it'll be something that you then need to review every year, every 2 years. It really depends on so many things, including resources, of course. But you asked as well about my process. I'm actually right in the middle of doing a chunky bit of tone of voice work it's for an education. I think they're technically a company. And what I've done with them is I've done 2 different surveys, online surveys, to send out one's to the staff in general, one's to the students. Then there's a more in-depth paper-based or Word document-based survey for the staff that are actually going to be doing the writing. And then we've got a Zoom call next week, actually, which would be a 3-hour Zoom call to go through all of their elements of their tone of voice and try and nail down what their voice actually is. And then I will write them their tone of voice guide. And in this case, I'm very lucky because they are investing properly in it, and they're having me go in and deliver an in-person workshop on how to then implement tone of voice. So they are being really thorough. It's like the dream level of thoroughness. Is that even a word? I don't know. I'm better at
It is
written down
now,
words.
right?
But whereas it's not ideal, but I do one-to-one Zoom calls with people, and I helped a solopreneur. I don't like that word, but it's an independent person, a consultant. I helped her to kind of nail down how she wants to sound within, I think it was a 90-minute call, that one. And that's not the dream, but that is the reality. Like, somebody's not going to have the same resources, or I mean, it would be a bit of overkill really for a one-person business to go through a really thorough like survey and then a tone of voice workshop for 3 hours, and the length of time spent would be a bit much for just one person. But yeah, she could probably have done with a little bit longer. But you have to meet people where they are. I think, especially nowadays, where lots of creatives are seeing a bit of a downturn in work. I think we need to be adaptable and be realistic as well. Another example in that, it's not for tone of voice work, but with some web copy, I quoted recently to somebody, and he came back, and thankfully, because sometimes you just get ghosted, he was very honest and said, I'm not in a position to pay that right now. What can you do? And so we looked at different ways of doing it, like if he writes it and then I copy edit it with him. So I think we do need to be really open to that nowadays, of doing things differently and perhaps spending less time per project, knowing that people's budgets are a bit stretched.
Yeah. People come back to you if you do good work for them. That's always the goal, is that you're empowering them with the tools necessary and the vision to grow. And then as business owners grow, they definitely need help, so they come.
And that's where like the integrity bit comes in as well, because if a client comes and they think they want this huge great big package of stuff, and you can see actually you really shouldn't do that yet because you haven't got this bit of foundational work done, and I can do that for you, it's not going to cost as much. Like that's where you can really build a reputation for being genuine and having integrity, by being the person that goes, I know you've got a big budget to throw at me, but don't do that yet. Just throw this little bit at me first. And it takes confidence to do that. And sometimes my husband probably be like, why didn't you just take the big one? Yeah. But there've been a couple of times in my freelance career where I've done that and kind of talked people down from where they thought they needed to be. Yeah. Just because it's not worth doing a big project without the foundations in place, or it's not quite right for their audience, or it's
no, and then
they have to take a big gulp first before you
you hope for the better good. That kind of reminds me of, we recently talked to Pedro Ruiz, and he's self-proclaimed like, yeah, I'm the guy that'll go in and rain on their parade, and ask why. Like, if you can do this for $20, then enjoy a solution that's a little more reasonable, and let's solve complex problems together. I do love the point that you brought up about internal storytelling, and that's something that even I myself overlook oftentimes, is that we're so audience centric and audience focused that we forget the value of having our internal teams prepared to share our narrative in a powerful way, and in the way that we hope our story, because brand voice and tone, brand perception, it's all meaningless if that's not how our audience looks at us as well. So we need to make sure that it's consistent throughout. I couldn't imagine having anyone more fun to run a workshop or run through some of those processes with than you.
Oh, thanks.
So to be mindful of time, we've got maybe 10, 15 minutes left for the recorded part of this podcast. You've agreed to do something super cool, which I
Yeah,
very...
and I didn't look at it.
Did you
Because I
not?
was like,
Okay, okay.
I want to
Well,
know, because I thought I want to do this like fresh.
I love
Got my
this.
fingers ready.
Okay, so everyone, we are going to tune in to a share screen here. For those of you who don't know, Mel, in addition to being a plant enthusiast and a master,
I have to request edit access.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just I'm saying that immediately because I
Okay.
just realized.
That's
So
okay.
just play the elevator music in the background.
Yes. We need to have that queued
Dun-dun.
up. I'll see if I can. I thought I had it opened up. My apologies, everyone, and thank you for your patience. While I am bringing this up, I will let you know that in addition to a plant lover and a mashed potato making expert, Mel also loves mechanical keyboards.
My keyboard.
So that is...
Oh, I just
I'm
bashed my
jealous.
mic. See that? That's absolute amateur hour.
Do you have access now? I think I can see your... Yes. Little anonymous
Let's
bat
try.
inside.
I'll just write the word poo, see if it lets me. No, I can't. It's not letting me yet.
Huh.
Let me just refresh it.
Okay.
Oh, hello.
Yes.
Think I can.
You got it? Okay.
I wrote
perfect.
poo. Yeah. Sorry, it's my children's fault that's my first,
That's
my
okay.
test word.
It's my fault. I probably should have sent it out earlier.
And I should have put poo because you're American.
Yes.
Anyway. So what? Yeah, you set my homework, and then I'll do it.
Yeah. So we just kind of wanted to go through a live presentation to kind of just show your skill set at work, and using a prime example of content that is most likely generated. This is generated from AI. I gave it ChatGPT a fake mechanical keyboard brand. I gave it a few details as far as the audience is concerned. And for those of you who are here with us, I'll actually just read the snippet out in case the screen's not clear. The copy that ChatGPT came up for this new mechanical keyboard says, "Introducing the Key Pioneer Precision Pro, our latest mechanical keyboard, meticulously crafted for typing enthusiasts and professionals. The Precision Pro model boasts enhanced Cherry MX switches for optimal
I've got Cherry
responsiveness."
switches on mine.
Do you? I need to upgrade my keyboard game. Ensuring
I don't know what it means, but I just remember that they are.
I think it's more like a gamer styled.
It's clicky.
Yeah. I use my quiet keyboard. I'm right beside my bedroom, so if I'm up until 3 o'clock or so, I get yelled at for all of the click clacks going on. This copy goes on to say that it features a robust aluminum frame, customizable RGB lighting, and a detachable wrist rest for maximum comfort during extended use. It's compatible with both Windows and Mac and includes a 2-year warranty. And it's for those looking for reliability and performance in their daily computing tasks. So, I mean, it hits a few points that are really relevant to someone that's looking for a keyboard, but it's just so bland, right? Like, does this excite you at all, Mel?
Well, the first thing that I would say, and this is such a cliche, but it talks about the features, not the benefits. So the first thing that I think of when I think of my mechanical keyboard is something like, this is going to be crap, because I'm doing it off the go. And make sure every keystroke, make sure you feel every key. Well, hang on. See, I'm going to edit as I go. Good. Feel every keystroke. Make every word count or something. That sounds a little. I've made it sound almost even more ChatGPT, but bear with me on it, because what people who use keyboards like mine to know is that they've got that click count. See, look, I can't even spell. Feel every keystroke, or like make every word click. No, feel every click of the keystroke. A keystroke, make it work out. And the mechanical keyboard might be meticulously crafted. I mean, you'd hope that all keyboards were meticulously crafted. Typing enthusiasts, no one calls himself a typing enthusiast. For terms of, I don't know, I'll come back to that. I'll put a word in here, insert word later. This is a real insight into how my brain works.
I love this.
To make every word count. So with the key pioneer precision, blah, blah, blah. No, it would start with, how would I start that? I wouldn't start with the key pioneer precision pro. First, it's a terrible name, but we'll overlook that because we only have a little bit of time. The key pioneer precision pro. So then, see, look, I'm already editing this bit. Make sure every click counts, and I'm gonna edit this bit up. Yeah, feel every keystroke.
I love seeing this live because this is for designers. This is the iteration process in which you bring your journal out.
This is like, oh, hang on, no, go back, no, go back. At your fingertips. That's what you want. You want to feel when you press a key. You want to feel that it's actually pressed it. Feel every keystroke at your fingertips. The key press makes every click count with, and then you start bringing with the enhanced. It's not a good right word. With what, like what enhanced how? We'll just put the name of it with optimal. So I'm just going to go through and really quickly highlight the key things here. So the responsiveness, the durability, that is cool. 50 million keystrokes. I don't know how many words that would give. So then I'd be going in. What I would then do, I'm actually going to Google it. Average word length. So the average word length is 5 characters. So that means that 50 million keystrokes. I don't know why I was about to open a calculator to work out 50 million divided by 5. It's the stress of being
10 million, right?
Like 10 million.
Yeah,
so
right?
10 million words. I'd change it to words because nobody counts their keystrokes, but they know how many words. We're going to just disregard the fact that there's going to be space bars and stuff. So
I'm so happy you did that. I was trying to work out how many words that is in my head. I'm like, it's more words than I'll ever write.
So it'd be something like let your fingers there's a lot of silence and thinking and looking like that when you're writing. So I'm just going to look to the side just so you get the real experience of what my process would be.
Okay.
What I won't do is start watching YouTube videos, which is part of my process as well.
I know.
I just open YouTube and start listening to The Strokes or Radiohead or something. Let your fingers travel across the keyboard. Capacity. I'll come back to that word. It's rubbish. Or over. We'll exaggerate because how are they going to prove that it didn't make 10 million words? With this durable capacity. And now I'm starting to think this is where with copywriting, and this isn't an excuse for why I can't come up with these words right now. With copywriting, it's so much of it is about the briefing process. So now I've got questions for the person who set this brief already. And my questions would include things like, it's really durable, but do you have to change the switches? Do the keys need replacing? Does the ink on the keys last for 10 million words, 50 million keystrokes? So just wanted to highlight that is where my brain is now going about asking these questions. Does the battery life, if it's a wireless keyboard, does the battery life last long enough? What's the durability? And so that's where the briefing process would involve really drilling down. So let me go back to the beginning. Feel every keystroke at your fingertips. So I'd bring the 10 million words. I'd bring that up top. I'm gonna shorten the name as well.
That works.
Will help you. Will not help. I'm gonna put that in my little square brackets that mean come back and revisit this. And then you're like, this is not good copy. But then I would go into imagine the stories you could tell, or the dragons you could slay. I'd put in something here about like bringing it back to why people use the keyboard. They're using the keyboard to talk to people online. So this is a very hack job of.
No, I think this is
like
beautiful
putting that
to
bit
see
in
your
there.
process. Yeah.
So then like a little bit of storytelling. Like, don't anyone actually use this? It's terrible as it is because it takes a long time. So well, I'm going to leave that as help because I can't think of anything else right now. But the point, I guess, is that at the beginning, you want to go straight in there, speaking to what the actual ideal customer will be using it for. So the keystroke, the clicking, and I haven't got the word clicking in here. I'm going to put clicky cherry MC switches, because that's what we want. They want a keyboard that that clicks and clacks. I can stop anytime you like. But these, like the robust aluminium frame, great, but what about it? Gives feel of lasting quality. And this is a bit waffly, but like, don't tell me it's got a robust aluminium frame unless you tell me why it's important. I mean, mine's got a metal frame as well, and it gives a weight to it that makes it feel like it's like gonna last. I wish I knew how many keystrokes I've done already, because it would be nice to know how far into my 10 million words I'm in. I didn't get the RGB backlighting, sadly, because they didn't have any left. But like the detachable wrist strap, instead of maximum comfort, I'd perhaps say something like prevent RSI with, you put something a little bit more, rather than just being, oh, it's comfortable. Something that's a bit more concrete as a benefit.
And so this is the breathing the life into it part. You've gone from just selling a product and focusing specifically on its features and hoping that that's enough, to giving it a direct connection with the audience. I mean, even in the first, couple of sentences, you're isolating the audience that wants a quiet keyboard, that doesn't want clickety clackety, loud things. So it's amazing to see how just a little finessing and restructuring and really focusing on the end result, I mean,
I'm not gonna get the whole thing done now.
And that's okay. I love that you're wanting to dig deeper, and that's also a kind of another point that I'll stop sharing my screen, and
stop sharing.
We'll come back to this. I would love to share this afterwards, but from a designer's perspective,
you're gonna make me finish it. You're gonna make me finish it and finesse it, because that, you're gonna have to pay. No, I'm only joking.
We can. We can pay you, and we'll also get some design work thrown behind it. But these
send me the keyboard too?
Yeah. I'll send you a couple that I've got. Like I said, I've had to cut back using my clickety clacks just because they're so loud throughout the house.
They are very loud. You could probably hear that. I should have moved my microphone down while I was tapping, actually.
Little ASMR like highlight from the podcast.
But it's funny that instantly I'm like, I don't have enough information to go on, and I started feeling like, oh no, I need to know more about this. I need to know how it lasts so long, what about it lasts that long, does everything last that long? And those kind of questions are why having a really in-depth briefing and discovery call at the beginning is so important, because then you're helping your little copywriter out. And that's another reason that I don't want to AI bash. I won't. That's why it's so important to have a human touch in this, because ChatGPT isn't going to ask those questions. I mean, it didn't give that information in that little test piece. And that's one of the reasons that I don't particularly like I don't even like editing chat. So thanks for that. I mean, in terms of like with clients, I don't encourage. I do copy editing, but I can smell it a mile off if something's been produced by ChatGPT or other generative AI exists. First, need to do that disclaimer. And it's just not. It's not emotive. Even if you kind of tell it to show some emotions, it's still not capable of doing that, or putting in little sprinkles of real life experience. And that, but again, that is not a good example of an end result.
No, definitely
it was
not.
fun. I liked it. I loved it. And actually, one of my favorite things to do is to have an hour or an hour and a half with someone where I'm copy editing live, like exactly like that. It's so much fun, and telling them why I'm doing stuff.
And that's perfect to see that process, but to also, like, connection within the creative industries is so important. So from a designer's perspective, there's so much respect for the questions that you would be asking, because then as a designer, I understand what to focus on. If it's really the durability of the keyboard for 10 million words, to have a calculator on there or something so that someone can see how many words they would write in their book and how much longer.
Or you'd put like you might put like, that's the complete work of Shakespeare times 5, or like I've got no idea how many words are in the complete works of Shakespeare, but you'd find some way of contextualizing it that isn't just a number of keystrokes. You'd convert it to, or the classic is football fields, especially with American brands and copy. It's like, how many football fields does this thing fill? So yeah, bringing it down to something that people can understand.
Man, I love that. Okay, so
but that was not, as I say, they take that as an advert for my skills.
No, I'm pretty sure that our audience understands and this isn't a thing that I would expect an end result from in a couple of minutes, because that's the value of hiring a professional, is that they're meant to dig deeper and they're meant to create a result that is more lasting. Like we're trying to build.
And that's when I was like, at this point, I'd look out the window and I'd go, and those are very valid. I wasn't joking. Like, there's so much thinking space and time that has to be built in, which is why I prefer, when somebody needs some work doing, I always prefer to charge by the project overall price, because of all that like thinking time and the breathing space. But I realize that it's now 9:10, so sorry for
no, that was
been talking too long. I don't have to go though.
I appreciate you going through I'd love to turn this into like maybe a little checklist, because we've covered so many things. One, the importance of not being rushed, like take a little extra time to put something out that is meaningful. The importance of brand tone and voice, kind of realizing that we can have different inflections, but it's all meant to be encompassed by one voice that kind of remains consistent. If you all do have any questions for Mel, please drop them in the chat right now.
I had to close the chat because I'm very easily distracted, so I'm going to read through now.
I am too. It's been everything to not like keep on looking over, but I love it. And while these questions are coming in, do you have any advice just for creatives in general, designers, people that are moving into communications and copywriting, just from your own personal life, things that have inspired you? And also, we always love to end on top influences. So if you have a couple of people or experiences or workshops, whatever, that have really played a pivotal role in your entire journey or here recently, we would love for you to shout them out.
Well, you did give me a heads up on this question, which I'm very grateful for, because it's a really hard question. Because there are so many, but I have to mention Sophie Cross, first of all. Hi, Ange, by the way. Ange designs Freelancer magazine. Sophie's the editor of Freelancer magazine. And the magazine was a massive influence on me going freelance, because I was in a job doing the communications and events and stuff for a local council, and it just kept, I would say, it kept winking at me. And I think you have to be open and aware of these things. So if you keep seeing something going, ooh, that's interesting, then you really ought to follow that interest. And you mentioned earlier about following curiosity. And I think that is one of the biggest like changing points in my life, was backing that Kickstarter. And I think it was in the March time, I think it was January that she had the idea to do the magazine, I think. And she can correct me if I'm wrong here. And then March was a Kickstarter, and then by the end of that year I'd gone freelance, because, or at the very end of the year, 31st of December was my last official working day. But Sophie's just an incredible human. She is so clear on what she wants and doesn't want in life, and she's just inspirational, because she doesn't care if she's doing something that's a bit countercultural or a bit against the grain for some people. She'll just do what she thinks is right. And she's just really a really good, wholesome person to be around, as is Ange. Hi, Ange. And so Sophie and the magazine were both big parts of my life and my story. And Vicky Ross, if we're talking about tone of voice in particular, Vicky Ross is such a champion for all copywriters everywhere. She started the Copywriters Unite events, or she promotes and coordinates those, and she's just immensely, like Sophie is, immensely generous in her sharing information and helping people and giving people shout outs. And she's genuinely one of those people that tries to raise the quality of the industry as a whole. So yeah, she's great too.
The benefit.
And I don't want to pick a third, because there's too many, but I feel like I should pick Ben because he's here.
Nice.
Hi, Ben. But he's been a massive influence on my freelance life as well. And I'm really glad that we're doing the podcast together. But I don't want to give him too much praise, because I just don't want to.
I'm really excited to see where your podcast goes this year. And that's a great just reiteration of the importance of building a valuable, kind-hearted, just empathy-driven network. Like to see that in action, that's amazing. And I'm glad that you're in the freelancing world, so you can spend a little more time with the kiddos and enjoy life on your own terms.
Yeah. And the only reason I didn't mention Liesl at the end is because I've already blown smoke up her ass earlier, saying she's so cool.
Everyone
amazing.
So Heather wants to know, how do you keep from comparing yourself? I mean, that's it's kind of
that's
for
hard.
everyone, but how does it impact you when you're online? How do you keep yourself centered and just keep yourself embracing your own personality?
It was really hard to begin with, because I felt a lot of frustration at only having reached this moment in my life of realizing what I wanted to do at, I think I was 35 or 6. I don't know. It wasn't very long ago. I'm 40 now. And I do remember for a while actually thinking, it's not fair. It's so unfair. Why didn't I do this earlier? It's not fair. There are people my age who are now immensely accomplished in their role. And then I quite quickly just decided to try not to care too much about that, and just focus on what I was doing. And I think the internet is an amazing thing. It's a horrible thing sometimes, which is why everyone quite likes the idea of having a Nokia 3310 dumb phone, where it just goes back to texting and using Snake. But it is amazing. It's amazing that you can connect with so many different people. You can build rapport with so many different people. And I think it's been such a huge part in my life, deciding like a real, I don't know what I keep saying, a real turning point, but there wasn't like a particular day where I just decided not to care, but over time I've just decided to lean very hard into who I am, what I like, who I like, who I want to spend time with, how I want to spend my time, the goals that I have. So I set the goal of speaking at CopyCon this year and ended up then working towards it. Yeah. Well, not yet. It's in November. Don't jinx it.
Yeah, coming up. So we'll have to get you to drop that date. Just one quick question, just for me personally. Do you think that it's easier or harder to make those shifts as we get older? Or rather, do you think that it's easier to embrace authenticity as a young, motivated person, or easier to move into it as an older person who kind of understands a little bit of your power?
I think when you're younger, people won't take you seriously. That's was my experience of, like, people will think that you have to prove yourself a bit more. Whereas one of the benefits actually of shifting my career so late, so very late in life, it's not that late, but it feels late, is that there's an assumed authority for the fact I have some grey hairs. People think I know what I'm talking about. So with age comes a little bit of gravitas. I do think if I was trying to find a job in an agency, going in to a London agency every day, I would desperately struggle, because I think then at that point it would probably be something that counted against me. But it's almost like there's an assumed level of experience that isn't actually there. Yeah. But when I first went freelance, I was very anti calling myself junior, because everything I'd done in my professional life up to that point had made me good at certain things, including because of being a careers advisor, like drawing out the story from people or drawing out what the lead is. So it didn't feel like I was a junior with junior level skills. Yeah. So I definitely avoided calling myself junior. But yeah, I love being older. I think it's great. It's a privilege not everyone gets to have.
That is true.
So I feel I am my most authentic, especially since having this haircut. So
looks great. Yeah.
I wasn't fishing, but it's amazing how much, like, when you start feeling truly like yourself, it can be very liberating. And again, going back to brand voice and your personal brand, it's just so much easier to be you than to try and put on a different mask. So yeah, I like being older.
Yeah,
definitely do. Same. I mean, to a point.
Yeah.
Well, my knees creak now.
Same. Oh my goodness, it's as loud as the clickety clack keyboards, right? Well, no, Mel, it has been a sincere pleasure to have you here with us. Love the boost of confidence, a little insight into your working process, and just the overall value and benefit of stopping to consider these things, of embracing our own personality, our own power, and really attracting opportunities that are meant for us, as opposed to creating an uncomfortable journey hidden behind a mask. So definitely
I just have to say, Lisa's just said a lovely final. The older I get, the fewer shits I get.
Yes. Yeah, that's something we all need to.
So true.
It is.
So true.
It is. If you all are interested in more, kind of a more uplifting conversation as far as defeating imposter syndrome, overcoming self-doubt, we've actually got episode 1 in which we invited James Victore on, who is an expert at just kind of pulling out your personal confidence. So definitely a conversation that we're interested in continuing. Mel, it's been an absolute pleasure sitting down with you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate your expertise, your guidance, that little sneak peek into your process, and really just exploring the importance of personalization and consistency in the brand voice and tone that we develop. So before we let you go, I would love to know how we can keep up with you this year. You've got a lot of things going on. You're consistent on LinkedIn. You've got CopyCon coming up, continued writing for Freelancer Magazine. What are your favorite ways to connect, and how can we continue to follow your journey?
Always LinkedIn, because I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
I'm terrible. I can't quit it. I love it so much. But I've just set up the website for our podcast, and yeah, there's too many links. LinkedIn's easiest. LinkedIn's the easiest place.
Okay, perfect. We'll make sure that we get a list of everywhere, all of your links, because we would love to keep up with you and support you through CopyCon as you continue to develop your podcast, as you continue to write for Freelancer Magazine, and as you continue to show up like a superstar on LinkedIn. So once again, Mel Barfield, thank you so much for joining us. To everyone in the audience that joined us live, it has been an absolute pleasure. Don't forget that this episode will be posted on all of your favorite streaming platforms here shortly, so you can enjoy a replay at your convenience. We look forward to having you back next week for an inspiring discussion as we welcome Mark O'Brien. Until then, have a great week, everyone.